My name is Joyce Lai. I'm with Consensys. I'm an attorney in-house within Consensys itself. Which means that I spend the vast majority of my waking hours working at the intersection of law and the blockchain technology. For those of you who are not familiar, Consensys is a venture production studio with a focus on the Ethereum blockchain. We currently have about 700 employees in about 28 jurisdictions all over the world. And before I move on further, I should probably say that the views I express here are those of my own and are not necessarily those of Consensys. So what do I do at Consensys? We cover a lot of ground, but one of the things that I work on is a strategic initiative called the Brooklyn Project. I don't think we have we have a slide up there. So the Brooklyn Project is our industry-wide effort to promote responsible tokenization economies that can empower and protect consumers. And one of the reasons we started the Brooklyn Project and why we thought was necessary is simply because the blockchain and the decentralized Web 3.0 creates these new types of business models that we haven't had a chance to experience before. And that causes current policies and laws and framework to not work quite as well with these types of new technologies. So for example, in the traditional network model, you have users in the network who don't necessarily know each other, and they maybe want to transact with each other. And so then you have these intermediaries in the middle, which brings together the users and helps them do the transaction. And at the same time, it helps them collect information about these parties, and that information is stored in more of a siloed manner. And to the extent that the users create value within the network is usually the intermediaries in the middle who capture the vast majority of that value. And so within the decentralized framework, the business models are different, right? And it's different because we now have these natively digital assets with these tokens on the blockchain that literally can represent anything that you want it to be. And they are native because they are born out of the code, and as opposed to digital assets, which are just merely digital representations of the analog world. And these tokens, these natively digital assets, can be anything you want it to be. You can program them however you like. And the fact that these tokens can represent anything, I think, presents kind of a problem for how we typically think about things. And it's kind of that ambiguity and all the possibilities there that's causing current policies and the frameworks that we already have to not quite fit nicely with tokens. So going back to the networking example, in the decentralized web, you still have users in the network. So take a car sharing network example like Uber, right? So you have the passengers who want a ride, and then you have the drivers who can provide the ride, and they want to do business with each other, and they need to be connected. So in that case, like in the decentralized web, like who is the intermediary here? And the answer is there is no intermediary, because the thing that connects these passengers and the drivers is actually computer code itself. It's the protocol, right? So, and then the way you access that protocol is by way of the tokens. So whoever created the protocol basically created these assets, and they're programmed in a way that's very flexible. And kind of what are the ramifications of that? What that means is once you have computer code in the middle instead of a person or a company, it means that you can have other third parties who may want to build additional businesses into the protocol. They can just do that directly into the network, right? We're not talking about these people asking for the permission of this Uber or whoever in the middle to see if they would like to do a partnership together. That's not what's happening, because they can directly build their code, their software, their business directly into the network itself. You can imagine examples, say you can have a car dealership or maybe even an insurance company who can plug themselves into the network and utilize the data that's generated in the platform to say provide policies or car leases that are tailored to what the driver actually needs. Maybe they can take into consideration the passenger feedback to the drivers and just make that a lot more tailored and a lot more useful. So these are the types of new business models that this decentralized web can create. And the access point are these tokens, and the current framework just doesn't really work that well. Our current policies don't work that well in that framework. So this is where the Brooklyn Project comes in. And once again, the Brooklyn Project is our industry-wide initiative to promote responsible token projects that can empower and protect consumers. And we do that by way of education, we do that by way of thought leadership, and we do that by way of product development. So our rationale is that if we can educate the consumers out there better, right, then maybe they can vet out the bad projects. And, if we can help people understand how these assets can work and what the platforms can do, and know how to talk about them properly, then the people who are making the projects can create better projects and be able to market them and articulate it in such a way that's helpful for the consumer and not to speculators. And also really importantly, if we can have policymakers understand the technology better and for them to be able to speak about it in a more precise way, in a more accurate way, then hopefully they can make policies and legislation that's more tailored and more fitting for the technology, and hopefully in a way that is not going to stifle innovation, because we want to be helpful here, and we don't want regulation to kind of kill the blockchain technology. So in terms of the thought pieces that we have, just yesterday we published a piece for open comment. By the way, the Brooklyn Project is an open source initiative, which means we open it up to the community. We think that it's better to get the feedback of everyone as we're developing these processes together. We think it's a collaboration. So just yesterday we published a piece called The Taxonomy of Digital Assets. It's on our website right now, so you guys should all go take a look at it, where we made a document that really thoughtfully goes through the different types of rights and characteristics that a token can have. We really break it down so that people can really think about what types of rights they can have in a token and how they can communicate that properly to their audience. And if they're a consumer of the network, like the types of things that they can look for. So that's one of the things we just published recently. So another thing we're working on is a framework that token projects can follow so that they can be as consumer friendly as possible. As you know, currently we're operating under a increasingly hostile regulatory backdrop, and we think the only way that this technology can really succeed for us to be relevant 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, is really to act responsibly. We need to let the regulators know that we hear them when they're trying to speak to us through, some of their speeches and existing enforcement actions. The projects that are going to survive in the long term are going to be the projects that share the same goals as the regulators. And what they want is to protect their consumers. So, and we think that token projects should also strive to achieve that same goal, to the extent that you share these goals with the regulators. That's how we're going to communicate to them that we're listening, that we're actually, we take them seriously, and that we're trying to achieve the same thing that we're doing, and that people aren't necessarily going rogue. So I encourage every one of you to get involved with the Brooklyn Project. You can find it at thebrooklynproject.consensys.net. And once again, as an open source effort, we have a Telegram group with over 1,000 really active participants from all over the world. They represent all different parts of the industry. They're talking about this stuff every single day on the Telegram group, so please get involved. We also have a Reddit page which you can also access through the website, is where we post our documents that we open up for collaboration. It's a Google document, so you guys can comment directly in there. But generally, we really hope that this can help move the industry in a more responsible, long-term thinking direction. And I'm sure all of you will have a lot of great input, so I hope to see you in the Telegram group or otherwise, and you can always reach out to me if you guys have any questions. Thank you.